Hello everyone, welcome to Kala Productions. My name is Bryce Kala, and today we're going to be doing some tabbing for an original song called Heartache Collector by my solo project Midnight Notion. We're going to be doing this in Guitar Pro 7.5 on a Mac. So if you're using a PC, some of the keyboard shortcuts will be a little bit different, but you won't be too far behind. Let's get started. I want to start with the drums because this song starts with drums, but this window is a little small for my liking. I have a lot of white space in it, and it's just a little too much. So I'm going to zoom in. We're going to go to View, Zoom In, and I want you to notice something, some little sleuthy trick here. This tells us that Command greater than is the keyboard shortcut for zooming in, and Command less than is the keyboard shortcut for zooming out. However, anyone that knows their keyboard well enough knows that greater than and less than are actually above the period and comma keys. So this keyboard shortcut is actually Command Shift period and Command Shift comma. Just something to watch out for as you're learning your keyboard shortcuts. Again, on a PC, this is going to be slightly different. It'll probably be Control Shift, but you'll have to decipher that for yourself. So, my keyboard shortcut, Command Shift period for zoom in. I can click it there or memorize the shortcut. Boop, 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 boop. That's big enough for me. Now time to do some tabbing. Note that if you don't know rhythm theory, that's okay, but this program's going to be a little harder for you to learn because everything in this program is based on note length. So every time I enter something in, you see this gray symbol here. This is a quarter note rest, and that assumes that we're about to enter in a quarter note because quarter note is selected here. It also assumes that we are going to be using mezzo forte as our volume. So if any of what I just said is going above your head, I encourage you to go look online and do some reading or go to the library and learn a little bit about rhythm theory. This program will be much easier on you if you know a little bit more about what these symbols mean. Anywho, let's say I didn't want to start with a quarter note. Let's say I wanted to start with an eighth note. You can hover over anything and it will always tell you what that thing is. So I can click on eighth note, or I can use the keyboard shortcut plus or minus to switch between, kind of toggle between those notes. So plus goes at a smaller size note, and minus goes to a larger size note. That's a little counterintuitive in my opinion, but if you want to think of it this way, a quarter note, the bottom note of 1/4 is 4. The bottom note of an eighth note is 8. So 4, 8, 16, 32, so on and so forth. So maybe they're adding lower numbers, they're adding bottom numbers and subtracting bottom numbers. Maybe that's why the quick key is inverted like that. I'm not really sure, but we're just going to have to get used to it for now. So as you're entering things in here, you can just use your keyboard. You don't have to mouse back and forth to constantly select which note length you want. You can change them on the fly. Now, if I click this note, it's not adding anything to my drums. I want to start with a quarter note, but where do I add it? That's where this window comes in. Excuse me. This is where this view, Drumkit View, comes into play. Now this doesn't look like a drum kit per se, but it lists all of the pieces of a drum kit, all of the possible pieces of a drum kit. I suppose you could get a larger kit than this, but this kind of gives you an overview of what options you have for the song. It also gives you all these numbers below the names, and it also gives the names down here. If you want to do a kick, you hit that here, and if I hit it again, it'll erase it and it'll replace it with a rest. I'm going to Command Z to undo. Or you could click on the note here, and it'll add it that way. Great. Command Z to undo that. Now, there are some people who prefer to use these numbers. Some people have taken the time to memorize every single one of these numbers, and they're using the tab option, and they're typing in 35 for kick drum and 38 for snare. Command Z, Command Z, Command Z, Command Z. But I don't like memorizing all these numbers. That takes me too long. I like to just click on the correct symbol because it's just easier for me. And also, one click versus 2 keys to enter, it just seems faster in my opinion. So I'm going to get rid of this tab view, and I'm going to do everything in the classic notation, standard notation style, because it's just easier for me to read it that way, because I'm a drummer and that's how I learned. You can use this program however you like. Let's get started on the song itself. It starts with 4 kick drum hits. And correction, it actually starts with 8 kick drum hits. But I don't have to key in all 4 of these a second time. I can click and drag to select all 4 of them, Command C to copy, and click in the next bar, Command V to paste. And now every time I arrow over, it'll add a new measure, a new bar. But that's the beginning of my song. Believe it or not, starts with 8 kick drum hits. Great. Now the guitar comes in, but when it comes in, it's following this kick drum. So I'm going to just copy these 2 measures, Command C, click in measure 3, Command V for paste, and then I'm going to start the guitar down here. The guitar is in standard tuning, so I know that this bottom line, we're in the tablature version. Each line represents a string of the guitar, and I already know the notes that are going to be in this. I have it memorized. They're 8th notes, so I'm going to use the plus key to get myself an 8th note, and I'm going to key in a couple of 8th notes, and it starts with all right, it starts with those notes, but then there's a break here, there's a rest. How do I add a rest? I can hover over the symbol here, and it tells me R is for rest. So I'm going to do that. Rest. And it's an 8th note rest, so we have one more 8th note left in the measure. If you count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, there's one more note allowed. Do-do-do-do-do-do. And then we're going to put a rest. And then this note is going to be a quarter note, so I can use the minus key to go back up to quarter note. Now we have the first half of the riff. Great. Now, here's another fun trick. If I select just the kick drum here, this is a measure that I'm going to repeat in this 5th bar. So I'm only selecting the drums, but note, you can go to Edit, All Track, Copy. You don't actually have to select all tracks. You only have to select one, and then use this keyboard shortcut, Shift Command C, to copy all tracks. So then when I click in bar 5, if I Command V, I get all of the tracks pasted in. So if I had tabs in the second guitar and the bass, that also would copy in. How cool is that? So now we have a repeat of the riff. All right, so the second time through, the riff changes a little bit. This 5, I'm going to arrow up, is actually there, and I arrow back down and hit delete to remove that first one. And a similar pattern here, and this is going to be a 8th. Okay, I ran into something that I'd like to show you. Right here, the rhythm, I have 2 notes here that I typed in as quarter notes, but I actually wanted them to be 8th notes. Whoops, my bad. I wanted an 8th note in between each one because they're hard stops. They're supposed to be dun, dun, really accented stops. So you can go into Note, Insert a Beat, and it always inserts the beat to the left of wherever your cursor is. Now this is going to break my time. If I click out of here, you'll see that this bar has become red because now this is no longer equal to 4 beats per measure. We have 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 5. This is now a 5/4 measure. I broke it. Whoops. Well, that's going to be easy. I'm going to select these 3. I'm going to plus to bring them back to 8th notes. And then I'm going to add one more 8th note rest with the R key. And now we have our full measure. And I forgot to add the kick drum. Command C, Command V. And now we have our full intro. So the guitar is going to repeat, but the drums are going to change slightly. So I'm going to take the guitars, Command C, Command V, and now the guitars are repeating a second time. But now the drums, after this bump, bump, there's going to be a little tom roll here. So I'm going to have to change this last note to an 8th note. And then I'm going to add 2 16th notes with the plus symbol, and I'm going to add this low tom hit twice. And now these low toms are really quiet, so I'm going to really boost them up with a forte. Make them a little bit louder. Then I'm going to copy these 2 measures here, Command C, paste them in with Command V, but I'm going to have the floor tom playing along with it. So I'm going to add a couple floor toms just by clicking this floor tom. And on each 2 and 4 beat, I'm going to add the snare drum, which is right here. Let's hear what it sounds like so far. All right, and I want to add an extra one here. So I'm going to subtract these down using the plus, and I'm just going to add 1. We only need 1 on this part. Then I'm going to copy it over again. Command C, Command V. Let's see what that sounds like. Okay. So there's something I noticed. This is the last part of the riff before we go into the main hook of the song, which is essentially the same thing but with a different rhythm and all the instruments. So I'm actually going to remove this last bit here. Actually, just this last measure. I'm going to change this to an 8th note by using the plus button. And then I'm going to remove the kick drum actually by just selecting it and hitting the delete key. And I'm going to move it over just 1 beat here. A little surprise for the listeners. And I'm going to be emphasizing the same notes as the guitar is. So we're going to have a rest here. R. Kick. R. Kick. And then a real simple fill. Ka. Pu. Ka. Pu. Those are technical terms. Bukaku paku. All right. And then I'm going to also do a fancy little move here with the hi-hat by doing a hi-hat open. And then I'm going to close it on the 1 hi-hat pedal. And I'm going to open it again. So essentially what's happening here with this fill is we're striking the hi-hat and the kick drum and then closing the hi-hat. And then striking hi-hat and kick drum again, closing it, and then doing a pukapukaku fill. And that should bring us into the main riff. Let's hear what the whole thing sounds like. All right, sounds great. We got the beginnings of a beautiful song. There's a long way to go, another 3.5 minutes worth, but I won't make you watch me tab the entire thing out. I'll let you get to tabbing your own songs. But before we go, remember the most important keyboard shortcut of all, Command S, Command S, Command S. Do not forget to save your progress so you don't lose it. It's very, very important. Make sure to check out MidnightNotion.com and subscribe to the Midnight Notion YouTube channel to see when the actual song makes its debut. And of course, subscribe to this channel for more tutorials and leave a comment below on what you'd like to learn about Guitar Pro 7.5, and I'll make a tutorial video on just that thing. Thanks for watching.